I want something that would be like a normal car that I would buy. I know that a lot of our audience watches VINwiki because they're aspirational about buying their dream cars as quickly and efficiently as possible. And many times that means buying a high mile car, a car with a bad history, a car with a bad title, or financing a car. But there is an unexpected and certainly unintended consequence of buying your dream car a lot early than most people figure out a way to do. And that is that you don't get to experience a lot of the interesting cars along the way. And that's hit me a lot over the last few years, that there are some cars that I would love to own and spend some time in, maybe even build up and modify the way that I saw them when I was young, but that I really can't justify because I don't have the time, the money, and the space, and I don't want to replace the cooler cars that I always dreamt of owning at the same time. And so even if it's not cooler than my Mercy, or not more fun than my 430 Scuderia, or not something that I would replace the flood title Manual Gallardo with, there are some cars that I would just love to have for a little while. One has been a V10 manual Spider Audi R8. They're pretty limited. There's about 300 in the US. I think they're really cool. They're comfortable. They're elegant. They're simple. And they're gated manual. So I'd love to have one, but not more than my Gallardo. So I've just never found the occasion to own one. The other one is a Porsche 996 Turbo or GT2, modified in the way that I saw them when they were new. There's some of these cars from like Fred Courteau, Pet Fred from Mod Find, that I saw the way he set his up with the Evolution Motorsport stuff and the Gimbalia stuff and the perfect BBS wheels, just everything that made that car something to aspire to. Now, I wouldn't rather have it than my Scud, but I'd love to spend some time owning one. The last one is a BMW E46 M3. This car came out in 2001. I'm 16 years old. Nothing could be cooler as this daily drivable, at that time, really supercar level performance. It wasn't that much slower than a 360 Modena. And so I wanted one, but again, it's hard for me to justify now. But fortunately, through YouTube and the opportunities like Car Trek, I get the chance to buy and play with cars that I normally probably wouldn't justify. And recently, one of our sponsors, Dream Car Exchange, came to me looking for different things that we could do to kind of grow the relationship together. And when we take on sponsor relationships here at VINwiki, I try to make sure that it's not just me telling the camera why people should buy some product or visit some website or do something, that there's actually added value to me personally, that it's something that I might use, and also hopefully that it adds some value in the content that we can produce. So in trying to grow that relationship, I brought up the idea of a car flipping contest. They are an auction platform to sell enthusiast cars. They need enthusiast cars to sell. I said, why don't you give a few of us a budget? We'll go out, buy an interesting car, fix it up a little bit, and make it available, no reserve on your site, and we can each play for a charity. So we'll designate a different charity that we want to play for. I'm going to use the Brock Yates Memorial Fund as who will be the recipient of all the profits from my car flip, and it gave me the chance to justify going out and buying one of these cars that I'd always wanted, but again, I don't have a spot in the garage for, and I probably wouldn't want to keep super long term. I just want to know what it's like to own and live with one for a little while. So the E46 M3 was the perfect car to chase. So I went off to Auto Tempest and Facebook Marketplace and eBay and everywhere else, just making all the offers that I could on kind of project level E46 M3s, because I didn't want something that was just perfect. I don't need something that's low miles. I want something that would be like a normal car that I would buy. And I happened to cross one on Facebook Marketplace. It's a 2002 Imola Red manual E46 M3. And I checked the Carfax. It's had 11 owners. It had a minor accident. It had some odometer rollback, but supposedly the car is pretty nice. And it's 20 minutes away from my house. Now I'm doing a lot of traveling with Gold Rush and everything else kind of during the window where we need to be shopping for and buying these cars. But I keep talking to the owner, keep working him down on price, and setting up a time when I can come and see the car. The other thing that was really special about this car is that it was supercharged by Active Auto Work. Now they were the most popular, most prolific, most significant modifying entity for the E46 M3 platform. They continue to offer great products for BMWs. Now, of course, I'm not much of a modifications guy, but this was the perfect example. And honestly, if I were ever to build Ed's dream E46, it would start with something like this, and then I would do kind of the logical things. Having the supercharger helps because it's over 400 horsepower, puts it very much kind of in parity with more modern performance cars, even though it's 20 years old. I love the color combination combination, red over red, but I would probably do the CSL style trunk, the CSL style bumper with the carbon finishers. I'd probably clean up the interior, delete the sunroof, give myself a little bit more headroom and stuff like that. And so this car, while being very rough around the edges cosmetically, was a very, very solid car to start with, kind of the perfect project platform. And so I went out to see it, and man, it immediately brought back all of the positive memories that I had. I remember being in high school and going with my father to test drive a BMW M3 that he was never gonna buy for him or me or anybody else, but it was a chance for me to get behind the wheel of one of those dream cars that honestly I just kind of jumped past with the rental car company. I bought Ferraris and Lamborghinis at the point where I would have been trying as hard as I could to scrape the money together and buy my dream E46. Now this one was a swapped from SMG manual car, which is a very popular thing. It's something you can do for $2,000 or $3,000. You buy the parts and everything else, and most of the SMG parts are pretty benign. Honestly, the only giveaway on this car is that there are holes in the back of the steering wheel where the paddles would have been anchored, but there's no pixels out in the dash. I guess whenever it went from about 190,000 miles down to 125,000 miles, they just put a new dash in it, so no pixels out. The car drives great. It's super solid. The only thing I've done so far is put some tires on it and take it to the mountains. I wanted to put a few hundred miles on the car to make sure that I wasn't going to be selling something that was going to just time bomb detonate immediately after I sell it, because inevitably in these kind of a flipping contest, we can't have that much experience with the car. But honestly, the car doesn't shake, it doesn't rattle, it rolls straight. It looks great. Now, the paint's peeling off of it, and I was torn because when I got the car, immediately I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna spend a little bit of money on the paint, I'm gonna spend a little bit of money on the wheels, cleaning them up, and then every time I was about to do something flip style, meaning I'm not gonna get the best body shop to do it, I'm not gonna pay everything that I could to not just band-aid up the wheels, but I'm not gonna strip all the paint, find the exact paint code and do all the things. I kept stopping myself, not because the car isn't worth it, but because whoever buys this car ultimately as their dream E46 project wants all that stuff to be done the right way. And me going out and getting some Hoovy Mako paint job doesn't make sense for a car that someone could probably own and love for a very, very long time. I mean, the Active Auto Works supercharger on this thing was only sold for a short amount of time. I talked to somebody there and I sent them a video of it because it was noisier than I was expecting it to be. And they said, yeah, they make a noise. You can send them out and occasionally have them rebuilt for the bearings, but they thought it sounded fine. Several mechanics here had seen it recently and it sounded fine. The previous owner got convinced to do the rod bearings, which it may or may not have immediately needed, but I have a $2,800 receipt from 3 weeks ago completing the rod bearings. The subframe was previously reinforced. All of the crazy issues that E46 M3s are prone to have been dealt with and solved on this car. It's got the comp package wheels, it's got the later upgraded taillights. I mean, I've got the whole factory intake and everything if you wanted to take the supercharger off, but the supercharger that's on this car would have cost $10,000 or $12,000. And the guys at Active Auto Works said they only sold about a dozen with this ASA supercharger because it was such an awesome package with great mid-range power and torque that they actually ended up at ASA rebuying an Active Auto Work kit and then re-engineering it on their side and just selling it as their own little standalone package. And so in addition to that and the full exhaust, this thing probably has $13,000, $14,000 worth of modification parts on it that you couldn't just go out and buy, but that are so period correct, that are so awesome to have, and the car just runs great. It makes super cool noises, especially when you lift the throttle and the supercharger winds down. I absolutely love it. And so again, is it something I want to own and spend the next $10,000 making exactly the way that I want it and own it forever? Probably not, just because I have so many other cars that I love putting miles on, that I want to keep putting miles on, and maybe even some more aspirational cars that I'd like to buy at some point. But for right now, for today, there's nothing that I was more excited to get into and drive up to the mountains and do my favorite loop around North Georgia than this car, because I had never had that chance. And it shifts so perfectly. Honestly, I think that this generation of M3 has the best manual transmission shift feel of any car that I've ever been in. And this one's even swapped, so it wasn't even an OEM one, but obviously they use all OEM parts most of the time on the swaps. So it's got some service records. It's been gone through. The check engine light was on when I test drove it. It's off right now. It's doing great. It passed emissions in Georgia recently, which is just your anecdotal OBD check. But hey, it works. And right now the car is just ready to go. Somebody's gonna need to clean it up cosmetically, and I think rather than me spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 doing that right now, I would much rather let somebody else buy it for that much less and take it onto their own hands, fix it exactly the way they want to. And I'm really excited to see what happens with the car flipping contest. It's gonna be some of your favorite storytellers from here: Rabbit, Doug, Arnie, Emil, Fakara, Casey, and then it's going to be 3 guys from their side. So you'll recognize Sean Kudnick from Dream Car Exchange as one of the participants in our What Would You Buy series of videos, so he'll be coming along. And so we'll have 10 cars that you can bid on, all no reserve, all the profits going to charity, and we will see who the greatest car flipper of VINwiki is. But regardless, I am grateful for just the invitation to spend some time in a car that I've always wanted. You guys better spend a lot for it, because if you don't, I'll buy it back, make it mine, and find another reason to kick something else out of the garage perhaps. But until then, I'll be driving it, I'll be having a whole lot of fun, and we'll see where it goes from here. So tune in. The auctions will start on October 17th. I'll do an update on the 19th with all of us explaining why you should buy our cars, and then they'll end on the 27th, and around the 30th I'll tell you who won. So be sure to stay tuned, be sure to enjoy the car flipping contest, bid early, bid often, and buy your dream car on Dream Car Exchange.